Have you ever felt a connection so deep, yet so unexpected, that it left you questioning everything you thought you knew about love and loyalty? Imagine growing up in a home where the lines between family and the people who serve you are blurred, where emotions run deeper than what meets the eye. This is the story of Marcus, a young black man who finds himself torn between loyalty to his family and a love that feels both impossible and undeniable. Raised in a wealthy household, Marcus's life has always been filled with privilege, but also with hidden complexities. His mother, a successful businesswoman, employs a maid named Clara, a quiet, hard-working woman from a humble background. To the outside world, Clara is just an employee, but for Marcus, she has always been more. From the quiet moments they shared when no one else was watching, to the way her presence made him feel understood in a way no one else ever did. As Marcus grows older, these feelings intensify, and he begins to grapple with the realization that what he feels for Clara is more than just admiration. But society, his family, and even his own doubts make it clear that this love could never be accepted. Will Marcus follow his heart, risking everything he knows and loves? Or will he let go of his feelings to keep the peace? The tension between them is palpable, but what will happen next? The answer may surprise you, but for now, the question remains: can love truly conquer all, even in the face of overwhelming obstacles? Stay tuned for the next part of this emotional and thought-provoking journey. Marcus had always been aware of the difference between Clara and the rest of his family. He had grown up in a mansion, surrounded by wealth and luxury, while Clara came from a small, modest home in a neighborhood Marcus only heard about from the few stories she shared. Despite these differences, there was an undeniable warmth in the way Clara treated him, something he couldn't quite explain. It wasn't like how the other servants or staff acted. Clara didn't just follow orders or clean the house. She listened to him when he needed to talk, made him laugh when he was frustrated, and offered a quiet kind of understanding that no one else ever did. Over the years, those moments together became the highlight of his day. Marcus would find himself drifting towards the kitchen or helping her with small tasks just to steal a moment of conversation. He began to notice the way her eyes softened when they shared a joke, or how her voice seemed to calm him after a long day. But with every growing feeling, there came a new wave of guilt. His family would never understand. Society would never accept it. The idea of a relationship between them, an employee and the son of her employer, seemed impossible. Marcus tried to push these thoughts aside. He focused on his schoolwork, his friends, and the future that had been mapped out for him. But every time he walked into the house, the weight of Clara's presence lingered. Her kindness, her quiet strength, was always there, like a shadow in the back of his mind, reminding him of what he couldn't have. As he stood in the hallway one evening, watching Clara move through the house, the pull in his chest grew stronger than ever. What would it mean to act on his feelings? Could he risk everything for the woman who had been there for him in ways no one else had? The silence between them was thick, and with it, the unspoken truth. Marcus knew he couldn't ignore this forever, but would he ever have the courage to confront it? The tension in Marcus's mind grew unbearable. He couldn't deny it any longer. The feelings he had for Clara were too strong to ignore. Yet, every time he considered acting on them, his mind flooded with reasons why he shouldn't. His family's expectations weighed heavily on him. His mother had always been so clear about where he was meant to go, who he was supposed to be with. The image of a successful, powerful man, one who married someone from his own kind, was drilled into him from an early age. Even the thought of breaking from that plan seemed unthinkable. And then there was the matter of Clara's own life. She never hinted at wanting anything more than a professional relationship with him. Her life was tied to this job, and she took pride in it, always respectful and careful to maintain boundaries. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling, though, that there was more to her than the composed persona she wore. He noticed the way she'd sometimes linger in the garden, her eyes distant, as if she was waiting for something, or someone who wasn't there. But what was it? Did she even see him the way he saw her? Or was he simply fooling himself, projecting his desires onto someone who would never look at him the same way? Marcus began to observe her more closely, trying to read the small signs she might give away. One evening, as he walked into the living room, he saw Clara talking quietly to his mother. It was a brief conversation, but the way his mother smiled and nodded at Clara made Marcus feel a strange sense of unease. Was Clara more than just an employee to his mother? Was there something he didn't know, something hidden beneath the surface of their polite interactions? As the days passed, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that everything around him, the family dynamics, his own desires, even the house itself, was shifting. The deeper he delved into his emotions, the more unsure he became about where his heart should lead him. He was trapped in an invisible cage, caught between the people he loved and the woman who made him question everything he thought he knew about love, loyalty, and family. The tension between Marcus and Clara was growing more palpable with each passing day. Every time their eyes met, something unspoken lingered in the air, heavy and full of unacknowledged longing. Marcus knew he couldn't continue pretending that his feelings for Clara were just a fleeting phase. He had to make a decision, but the consequences of that decision terrified him. What if it tore apart his family? What if the people who had always loved and supported him suddenly saw him as a traitor to everything they stood for? And what if Clara, quiet, graceful Clara, didn't feel the same way? One evening, Marcus came home earlier than usual, hoping to catch a quiet moment to clear his head. He found Clara alone in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. The sight of her, so calm and focused, only intensified the storm brewing inside him. He knew this was the moment he either confessed everything or pushed his feelings aside forever. But as he opened his mouth to speak, a voice from behind startled him. "Marcus, are you home already?" It was his mother, entering the room with a smile that felt too bright, too forced. She had no idea about the turmoil inside him, the secret battle he was fighting. Her presence, always so reassuring, suddenly felt suffocating. Marcus froze, unsure of what to do. His mother glanced between him and Clara, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You two seem to have gotten close lately," she remarked casually, though Marcus could feel the subtle shift in her tone. It was as if she knew something, or perhaps she was beginning to suspect. His heart raced, and he turned to Clara, expecting to see the same discomfort mirrored in her face. But her expression was unreadable, as always. Was this the moment when everything would come crashing down? Would his mother uncover his feelings for Clara? Or would he finally find the courage to say the words he had kept hidden for so long? The air seemed to thicken, and Marcus felt as if the walls of the house were closing in on him. Something had to give, but what? The tension hung in the room, thick and unyielding. Marcus stood frozen, caught between his mother's gaze and Clara's stillness. But just as his mother opened her mouth to ask more questions, the doorbell rang, breaking the silence. It was the last thing Marcus wanted right now. His heart pounded as his mother turned toward the door, a look of curiosity flashing across her face. "I'll get it," Marcus muttered, almost relieved for the distraction. He quickly left the kitchen, his mind racing with thoughts of Clara, of his family, and of the dangerous edge he was teetering on. As he opened the front door, his heart skipped a beat. Standing there was someone he hadn't expected to see, Clara's brother, Darren. Darren was a few years older than Marcus, someone he knew of, but they had never really spoken. His appearance here, on the doorstep, felt out of place. Marcus quickly realized the reason. Darren wasn't here just for a casual visit. There was something serious in his expression. "I need to talk to you," Darren said, his voice low and urgent. Confused, Marcus stepped aside to let him in. As Darren walked into the house, his eyes darted nervously toward the kitchen, where Clara was still working. He turned back to Marcus, his face tight with worry. "It's about Clara," Darren began, his words heavy with something Marcus couldn't quite place. "She's been hiding something you need to know." Marcus felt his stomach twist. His thoughts raced. What could it be? Was there something Clara had been keeping from him all this time? Before Marcus could ask another question, Darren spoke again, his voice almost a whisper. "Clara's not just the maid. She's part of a deal your mother made, a deal that's going to change everything." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. He suddenly felt as though the ground beneath him had shifted. What deal? What had his mother gotten involved in? And what did it have to do with Clara? Marcus stood frozen, his mind spinning, as Darren's words settled over him like a heavy fog. "A deal your mother made," he repeated in disbelief. What could this possibly mean? Clara had always been a part of the household, yes, but a deal? His heart raced as he motioned for Darren to sit down, his thoughts whirling. "Start from the beginning," Marcus demanded, his voice shaky but firm. Darren hesitated, his eyes darting toward the kitchen again before locking eyes with Marcus. "Clara's not just here because your mum needs help around the house. She was hired for a reason that goes beyond what you think you know. Your mother, she and Clara's family had some history. Years ago, before your mother built the empire you know now, Clara's parents were involved in a financial crisis. Your mother helped them out, big time, but in exchange, she made Clara a part of her life in ways you'll never understand." Marcus felt his stomach drop. The idea that his mother had kept this secret from him, that his whole life with Clara might have been manipulated by a debt, made his chest tighten. But it wasn't just that. The most unsettling part of Darren's revelation was the implication of how long it had been going on. Before Marcus could speak, Darren rushed to add, "And she didn't just work for your mum, Marcus. She worked for your family. She was supposed to protect you from the moment you were born." A shudder ran through Marcus's body. The weight of what Darren was saying was too much to grasp all at once. But then the final twist hit him, the bombshell that would unravel everything. "And that's not the worst part," Darren said, his voice low. "Clara, she's your sister." Marcus's heart stopped. His blood ran cold. He turned slowly toward the kitchen, where Clara still stood, oblivious to the storm building inside him. The woman he'd fallen for, the one he'd believed to be just a maid, was his sister. Everything he thought he knew about his life, his family, was suddenly in question. Marcus's mind raced as Darren's words echoed in his head. His sister. Clara, the woman he had grown so close to, the one he had trusted, was his sister. The thought was too much to bear. He turned back to Darren, his face pale, his breath shallow. "What do you mean she's my sister? How could she be? Why would she—" Darren's face softened, but there was a quiet sadness in his eyes. "Your mother. She kept it from you for years. Clara was taken in by her after the crisis. Clara's parents died in a car accident shortly after the deal was made, and your mother promised to protect her. But she didn't want anyone to know the truth, didn't want it to affect your future or hers." Marcus's heart sank as he processed the weight of Darren's words. Clara hadn't been a maid by choice. She had been a part of his family all along, but in a way he couldn't have imagined. The relationship he thought was built on admiration and a shared connection was, in reality, a sibling bond he never even knew existed. He turned slowly, walking into the kitchen, where Clara stood, still unaware of the conversation unfolding behind her. She met his gaze, and the flicker of recognition in her eyes made his chest tighten. "Clara," he said softly, his voice strained. She nodded, stepping closer, her own eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "I never wanted to hurt you, Marcus," she whispered. "I never wanted you to find out like this. But everything I did, every moment I spent with you, it wasn't about a deal. It was about family." Marcus's mind spun. The love he had felt was real, but now it was tangled with the truth of who they really were to each other. He wanted to scream, to break down, but something about her quiet strength grounded him. As he stood there, torn between everything he had believed and everything he was learning, he understood the ultimate truth. Love wasn't always simple, and family wasn't always what you expected. It was about loyalty, sacrifice, and sometimes accepting the things you can't change. With a heavy heart, Marcus nodded, letting the truth sink in. Some bonds ran deeper than blood, but others, no matter how strong, could never be untangled.